how do we keep the Sabbath holy? So a lot of times there's much confusion around the Sabbath day. Why is that? Because you have the oral tradition, Jewish commands that had been brought about over years of rabbinical debate, and they had created all of these different commands that go along with the other commands, which can be beautiful in a way. I don't want to badmouth that, but Yeshua did talk about this a lot in that he was saying that you bear up heavy burdens onto the people, right? So the people, it was too much for them. It starts to become a heavy burden, right? And that's why you hear all this stuff about, things like don't turn off light switches on Shabbat, don't, tear your toilet paper, and all of these things. These are hyper-Orthodox rabbinical commands, okay? I don't personally follow those types of commands, okay? Yeshua said, don't put your traditions above the commands of God, okay? So there's traditions, and then there's the commands of God. This is an important breakdown to understand because you'll get lost in the sauce if you don't understand the difference between Orthodox oral traditions and the commands of God. You will also get lost in the sauce if you don't understand Christian oral traditions. That's your Christmas, your Sunday worship, your Easter eggs. What else? The doctrines of Christianity. If you don't understand the difference, Good Friday, that's a good one. If you don't understand the difference between the oral traditions of Christianity and the commands of God, okay? We are not supposed to be putting traditions. This is Yeshua's, Jesus, I think you use Jesus's words that I'm repeating to you. Do not put traditions of any kind above the commands of God, okay? Commands of God here, traditions, whatever, right? Okay. If you spend all your time doing the commands of God, you won't have time for very many traditions because the commands of God are so rich and they're going to feed you and they're going to show you things that you never saw before, okay? So let's get to the Sabbath. So what are the Sabbath commands? I'm going just off memory here, so if I get something wrong, somebody correct me in the comments. Don't work. Don't cause anybody else to work. Rest. Difficult, right? Rest. And don't light fires. And bake what you're going to bake and do it ahead of time. Now, there was something that Moshe added later on because the people were going out into the field to try to collect manna. And he said, don't go out of your place, okay? So that's basically, don't go into your office, right? Don't go out of town and go into your workplace, right? Because what the problem was is people were going to collect the manna when they were supposed to be resting and, having that tabernacle time with Yehovah, okay? So let's just kind of go through them. Don't work, so rest. Pretty easy, right? Don't cause other people to work. Don't buy and sell. Now, if you do, it might be too much for this video, but if you do a deep dive on buying and selling and how it's connected to the Sabbath, it will lead you to understanding the mark of the beast a little bit better, okay? And the mark of the beast is very much related to being able to put down your buying and selling and operating from a place of charity. Now that's too much for this 10-minute video for me to get into, but if anybody wants, I have deep dives on this type of stuff on my YouTube, okay? So don't buy and sell, because when you buy and sell, you're causing other people to work. If you go to the store and buy and sell, you're going to cause other people to work, right? Because the idea is that everyone gets a rest. Nobody has to be a slave, right? Nobody has to work 7 days a week. Nobody's going to be a slave. We're going to let everybody rest, okay? We're going to let mama rest from cooking. She's not going to have to cook and do dishes that day. We're going to make sure Papa's at home with his family, and he's going to spend that time with his family. The one thing I always, my heart cries out for this. My heart cries out for this because do you guys realize how many marriages would have been saved if people were just keeping the Sabbath day holy? Holy means set apart, by the way. Holy means you've set it apart from other days. So when people say every day is holy, that's not true. Holy literally means it's set apart from other days, right? And Yeshua is not your Sabbath because Yeshua is not a day. Is Yeshua a day? No. Yeshua is Lord of the Sabbath. Now, if you look into the word in Hebrew for Sabbath, it's connected with a seat or a throne, okay? A seat. He sits on the Sabbath day. So do you want to change where he sits, where he's Lord of, or do you want to keep it? You want to be there with him as Lord of the Sabbath, okay? Don't light fires. I love this. It gets so excited. Oh yeah, what was I talking about? I was talking about the save the families. Okay, so think about this. How many families would have been saved? How many divorces would have been prevented if the family was keeping the Sabbath holy? Number one, Mama's not cooking and cleaning that day. She's having a day of rest. She's finally getting that time to herself that she needs, that time with Yehovah that she needs. The food's been prepped ahead of time. The kids are learning to serve themselves and put away their dishes. And, a lot of families get paper plates that day and just, don't do dishes, or they leave it until the next day and they just let go and relax and just have that family time. Okay. Dad's home with the family. He's taking that day off. He's resting with the family. He's spending time with the family. He's going through scripture with the family. They're all together doing these things. How many families would have been saved? How many families would have been saved? Think about it. Okay. What else was I talking about? Oh yeah, fires. Okay. Fires. Don't light fires on the Sabbath. Okay. So obviously that comes from ancient times. You would have been, if you start lighting a fire, you're going to be cooking food. You're going to be doing stuff. You're going to be working. If you live in a cold climate and you need a fire, I'm going to get this question anyway, so I'm just going to cover it. If you live in a cold climate and you need a fire to stay warm, you would light the fire ahead of time and keep it going. You would make sure you have the wood ahead of time and keep it going. Okay. The command to preserve life usurps the command to not light a fire. Okay. Preserve life. That's what Yeshua was always talking about when he was talking about, do you not heal on the Sabbath? Do you not, if your ox was in a ditch, would you not pull it out? Preserving life goes above, you know what I mean? So there's halakha. It's called halakha in Judaism. It's like halakha to the command, right? Yeshua was speaking in a halakha understanding, right? If you have somebody dying on the street, you stop and you help them, even if it's a Sabbath day, obviously, right? Okay. So, don't light fire on the Sabbath also has a really deep spiritual meaning, which I find comes up every single Sabbath day. I always find, like, I'll start to wind down for the Sabbath, and then there'll be somebody in my comment section just going off, like popping off, trying to argue. And it, like, never fails. It's so fascinating. And that's lighting fires on the Sabbath, right? Trying to cause debate, division, ruffling people up, trying to get fires in people's spirits going on the Sabbath day. The Sabbath day is for rest and unity and coming together, and that beautiful moment where his whole kingdom just comes before him and sits at his table and breaks bread, of the bread of his word, right? And just breaks bread together. Okay. A while ago, Abba was having me talk a lot about the Sabbath. And when I talk about the Sabbath, people just get real triggered, which is odd to me because it's a commandment. It's one of the 10 commandments. So why are people getting triggered about the Sabbath? It's one of the 10 commandments. Should we as believers not talk about it, right? But anyways, people get really triggered and it causes a lot of drama in my comment section. So I was avoiding it, but I was like, no, you got to tell them about it. I'm like, okay, cool. And I was praying. I was deep in prayer with him, and he gave me this vision. And I said, Abba, what's your heart on this? What's your heart on it? And he showed me this vision of like a dad, like a father, sitting at a giant table. And all his kids were at the... I'm going to cry. I'm going to keep recording. He showed me this vision that he was at the table, like a dad at the head of the table. And all his kids were together around the table, just sharing their stories, breaking bread. All of his kids. Judah, Ephraim, Joseph, every tribe. Even you guys, you Christians, come to the table. Come to the feast. Love you guys.